Episode 9 of the Juice Box Junkies. Marty Coleman from Kyle, Texas. With us today in the top right, Christian Espinoza, Seattle, Washington. Same. The background is the same, Christian. So I'm assuming you're in the same place this week.
Yeah, yep. I'm in Washington this week.
All right. You're not repping the Mariners, are you? Your hat's turned around backward. We can't tell.
No, this is my master's alma mater, the
Oh,
Mhm.
Arizona State Sun Devils.
there you
Known
go.
known for their known for their educational programs.
Most
Yeah, they
definitely.
are.
Most definitely. And from Dallas, Texas, Matt Uncle Kunkel. I just made that up. Matt, I used to know a guy with the last name Kunkel. We called him Uncle Kunkel. That's your name, at least for now.
That works.
That works. And from Virginia, the only guy on this podcast who has faced Justin Verlander and whiffed, just like 117 Nationals did today in 4 innings. It's Brian Dunleavy. How's it going, Brian?
It is cold. I just it's not happy out here. Below freezing temperatures the past 2 nights.
It's funny because I went to Clemson. I saw Clemson play University of Pittsburgh last weekend. 43 degrees, a little bit of rain mixed in there. They were miserable. They didn't score any runs. Pittsburgh was running around in short sleeves like it was the middle of the summer. They were running around the bases too. So yeah, your part of the country up there is still having a little cold snap. Fellas, we're not going to talk about the collective bargaining agreement today. We're going to talk about baseball. Now, it's spring training baseball, but it's baseball nonetheless, right? And in the Slack channel, some of us are having an opportunity to watch some of these games while we're in conference calls and asking each other questions about what's going on and what's happening. What I know from today is Justin Verlander looked like mid-season form Justin Verlander. Jeremy Pena looked like a major league shortstop. Chas McCormick got a couple hits. We'll talk about Chas in a couple minutes. But let's start with the bigger picture from spring training as a whole. Christian, we got 9 days to go until the season kicks off, the regular season, when the games start counting. Your take on spring training so far as a whole?
I think it's been interesting. Obviously, we've got a little bit of a shortened one, so things are starting to we're seeing a lot more packed into this than we normally would. I think at this point during normal spring training, we would have already been seeing guys that we don't typically see out there. But today, if you watch the game, I mean, a lot of starters were out there. Tucker was out there, and obviously Verlander's getting stretched out, and so I think we're getting to see a better abbreviated version of spring training that we normally get to see, in the sense that we get to see the players that are big league guys. But I also think that's a little bit of a detriment to some of the other young guys that have already been kind of shipped out and shipped off to their respective camps, that wouldn't have normally got the face time with, a guy like Hunter Brown, who's, gets to sit and spend, extended months or extended month or so with Justin Verlander and stuff like that. I mean, obviously there's some crossover a little bit, but not to the extent that it was. So I think there might be some, and that could be even league wide of fall off of some maturing and sort of development in that aspect.
Yeah, today we were talking before we hit record, and today we started seeing more of the actual lineup that we're going to see, hopefully starting next Thursday. And we'll talk about what order those guys may end up in a few minutes. But Matt, what's your takeaway from spring training so far?
I mean, life goes on after no more Carlos Correa. I had a hard time believing it myself, but I think the story's got to lead with Verlander looking great, coming back from TJ, and Pena. I mean, they're propping him up like he's going to be a superstar. I hear stories all over the place where they're saying he's going to be great. It seems like he's going to be good. So I mean, there's some excitement. I think. As excited as you could be in the offseason where you lose Carlos Correa.
Yeah, it's not going to be Correa, but from all looks, it's going to be not so bad. It's early. Things could happen. Could start out a 1 for 28 or whatever Alex Bregman started out. Who knows? But that's part of the excitement, right? Unfortunately, it may not be good excitement. It may be not knowing. So kind of interesting. Brian Dunleavy, your takeaway from early spring training?
I mean, I think, like everybody was saying, the guys are looking good. It looks like they're getting into form here. I just have a little bit of concern, and I'm no big league manager or anything, but we have 5 games left in the spring training season, if you will, and a lot of the guys have maybe played 1 or 2 games total, and if you're looking at putting together some chemistry, let's say in the middle infield between Pena and Altuve, or you're looking at getting some of the other guys work in center field. Nobody's really gotten any. It's been Chaz pretty much the whole time. So we'll see what happens, but I think Dusty's kind of sitting in a little groove and just throwing guys out there and seeing what happens, and not worried about the team gelling as much. But I think the biggest question going into these next 5 games is who gets the 2 extra slots, for the first month of the season. I think that's a great question that we'll have to figure out here in the next week.
Well, if Chaz has been starting all of the games, and I haven't paid much attention to the details, he only had 9 at-bats going into today, 12 after today. I don't know how many walks he has, but I don't think any or many, but because that's not his game. But that it is very concerning that they're not going to get the usual number of at-bats for the whole team. But I guess that's going to go for the entire league, right? As we talked about, a little bit of shortened spring training. And let's start off talking about the obvious, right? No more Carlos Correa. He's now a Minnesota Twin. The shortstop apparently is going to be Jeremy Pena. My unprofessional take, or not a scout take, is he looks pretty good. He looks like he can handle himself. He has tools, obviously, but as Brian was alluding to, he led me right into it. The defense and the throws that you saw from Carlos Correa, it's not going to be the same. It can't be the same for a rookie. Carlos Correa didn't look like that when he was a rookie. So I just hope that the hopes are contained and he's not criticized too much for not being Correa. He can't be Correa. But one of the things we've seen recently and heard is that Dusty Baker does not want Jose Altuve to lead off. Apparently that's Chas McCormick is not an option, and we'll get to more about Chas in a couple of minutes when we talk about center field. But somebody's got to lead off. Are they going to put the pressure on this young kid with 0 major league at bats to not only play shortstop and replace Carlos Correa, but bat leadoff? Christian, what are your thoughts?
I mean, what other option do you have? I mean, Jeremy Pena is your starting shortstop at this point. Maybe it's an experiment that you run out. I find it hard to believe that you couldn't put anybody but Altuve there. I know that's not where they want him, and obviously, if we had George Springer still on this team, there would be no doubt that Altuve is better suited further down in the lineup. But it's just I don't see an alternative. And my big thing that I'm kind of thinking about, at least with Pena specifically, is he has kind of had a meteoric rise. Like and obviously Correa's potential exit really got the organization gassed on his development. And I think he is going to struggle a lot more than the team and everyone seems to believe. I mean, I think it was Jose Altuve was talking in the locker room like he's going to be a superstar. Like he carries himself like he's got the swagger, he's got that great attitude. He's in hitting coaches are like he's got really great twitch. He's fast. He's there's that Space Cowboys, I guess now video. He had it hit it inside the park home run last season. I mean, he's got all the tools there. I think it's just how fast he's moved through the system that he's going to get really thrown into the mix, and I don't think it's going to go well. They may try it. I don't think they have another choice at the moment and maybe if that's what they ultimately want Altuve, but I think if they don't start with Altuve at leadoff, they'll end up with him at leadoff. So but yeah, I think it's great. I think you have a little bit of a time to give him a shot. I don't think you can give him too long of a time at that. This is a team trying to win the division, and the division's gotten tighter. Our team is not as strong as it was, a month ago. So yeah, I say give him a shot, but keep the leash short.
Understood. Matt Kunkel, your take on Jeremy Pena not only being the shortstop replacing Carlos Correa, but also beating the leadoff batter.
Hey, well, defensively, it's nice to have a safety blanket with Aledmus Diaz and another veteran, Nico Goodrum, Brian's favorite player, to lean on. As far as leading off, I too miss the days of Springer leading to Altuve. It seems like the way they're speaking about Jeremy Pena, they may give him that opportunity. I don't know if that's necessarily fair. I think he'll, if I were Dusty, put on my Dusty hat, I'd probably start him on the lower half, the lower third of the lineup and see if he can pick it up. But like what Christian said, other than Altuve, I don't know what other options you have. I like the idea of maybe having Tucker there because he's quick. He seems to stay longer in the counts, but then you miss out on your righty-lefty combinations in the middle of the heart of the lineup. So, I'm gonna guess it's gonna be Altuve, but hopefully Pena can continue this rise. And I think if that's the case, and he's a good contact hitter, and he's not he's not taking first swing flyouts like Altuve sometimes does, I think he'd be a good leadoff hitter for the Astros.
What about a 39-year-old batting champ leading off Brian Dunleavy? What's your take on the Pena at shortstop and leading off potentially?
Well, I think Pena's shown he has a defensive skill set that is going to be pretty fun to watch, and he's going to be definitely close to the same as Correa. He doesn't quite have the arm, as we talked about before. He doesn't quite have the arm that Correa has, so he might not be able to host some guys on those deep balls in the outfield essentially when Correa gets the ball. But I think he'll be able to get the balls pretty quickly and fill in the gaps. Defensively, I don't think we're losing too much at all. I don't think there's much of a fall off. However, I think the big fall off comes at the plate. As we're talking about. One of the big things, and I was hoping he'd get a lot more ABs, going into the season in spring training. He's like we talked about and Matt mentioned, he's, no major league at bats. I would start him against any prospective major league pitcher in spring training, so he at least gets to see a bunch of major league guys throwing at him instead of AAA pitchers, just to get him the experience and at bats. Sure, you want to look at the other guys at the position, but at least get him one or two at bats to start the game and go from there. But I think I don't think he'll be the leadoff guy. I don't foresee that happening. I think Dusty Baker's going to go back to his roots a little bit, and he's going to put him at the 9 hole and put Maldonado at 8, and get the quick guy in the 9 spot to maybe lead off and come around on the front side. And then, I really think it'll be Altuve because going back to the Correa talk, I don't believe anything the Astros are saying right now. Just to say that it's not Altuve, we'll throw that out there. Let's say it's not him. There's only 2 other options, and that's going to be Brantley, which is your best option at the leadoff spot, the high average guy, good contact hitter. And little speed, not too much in his older playing years, but he's probably the best option. And then they'll have another rookie out there in the center field probably. So I think most likely if it's not Altuve, it's going to be Brantley, and if it's not either of those guys, it's going to be Pena, and he's just going to get thrown into the fire. But right now, looking at the spring training stats, I don't want to say that they mean nothing, but looking at his current spring training stats, he's striking out a heck of a lot, and you don't want that for your leadoff guy. In 8 at bats, he struck out 3 times, so not counting today's game. But that's not a good stat for your number one guy to get on there. You're basically having Altuve lead off that in that way, anyways. If that's the case.
Yeah. What you excuse me one second, Matt. I was just going to say what you said was what I was told in high school when I was put in the nine hole. You're my second leadoff hitter. So I've heard that one before. I've heard that before. Okay, Matt, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, like, this will be an interesting experience for Astro fans because, I mean, I'm trying to think of a comp. Like, who was the starting shooting guard for the Bulls the year after Jordan retired? Like, are we going to really be we got to temper expectations of what a 24-year-old rookie can produce. You know, once we have a platinum glove, all-star, superstar world champion leave our team, I'm hoping he doesn't lead off to start, and we don't have this expectation that he's going to produce like George Springer and play defense like Carlos Correa. Let's give him a fair shot at earning his role to the team.
Yeah, and I would say too with that, I 100% agree, and I think he might even earn the leadoff spot halfway through the season if he plays well enough. But to start off the season, I don't think it's a realistic expectation to put him in that. I don't think that's fair.
Well, in reality, that's what happened in center field, right? You didn't lose all of the production when George Springer left, but it wasn't George Springer. I mean, it wasn't the same as George Springer. So I think the Astros are facing a similar kind of thing at shortstop. Christian, I know your time with us is limited and you wanted to talk about the rotation. So let's jump to the rotation discussion right now. So we found out recently, apparently, that Christian Javier is going to end up in the bullpen despite his abilities as a starter. I believe he should be starting over Jake Odorizzi. I know there are some here that feel differently than that. And while I respect that decision, it kind of feels like to me, and you and I were talking before the other guys jumped on, I'll let you tell them what we were saying, but it kind of feels like to me that Javier is being penalized because he has a skill as a long man that Jake Odorizzi doesn't have. Now, if you ask me, Odorizzi doesn't have a lot of starting skill, but, okay, beside the point. I don't understand. It's like he's getting penalized. And so the question is, what has to happen for Christian Javier to get into the Astros starting rotation?
He doesn't. Period. I think the Astros are done with him as a starter. I think that's it. I mean, it was never anything that he did wrong. Christian Javier was more than fine prior to that. It ended up that we had a pitching surplus. And we just did. One of these guys was going to have to move. We just signed Odorizzi to, $12 million or $13 million a year. He's not going to go. He's not going to sit on the bench. And so Christian Javier he's just somebody that's wrong place, wrong time. I mean, he's been solid. In the last two seasons, 3.53 ERA. I think a 1.23 ERA plus. Like, he's doing fine. Like, it's just, I just think the team sees his value as in that long relief, middle relief role. And and throughout the season last year, he did come through and really kind of dig some out. I mean, everyone had a questionable relief appearance last year, definitely towards the middle of the season, but he was strong. I mean, he still has a 10.6 K per nine. Like, he's really, really good. But I just don't see him moving back into the starting role. I think that especially with younger guys like, Hunter Brown looking like Justin Verlander's baby brother or other baby brother. And, Forrest Whitley, working on his comeback. And I just don't see a place where Christian even fits into the rotation moving into the future. And so, you're paying Odorizzi $13 million. He's not going to sit on the bench. He's going to be in there. He's going to eat innings. He's going to throw 5 innings a game. If he gets 6, it's great. If he keeps his ERA under 4.5, I think we're okay. Now we can't roll that into the postseason, but we didn't this last year either. So, obviously injuries kind of derailed that, but generally I think that as the rotation stands today without Lance McCullers, Christian Javier is just not going to be a part of it. If this was his shot, would be his shot if he was going to get back into the rotation, and it's just not going to happen. So I think he's done. I think he's done as a starter with the Astros.
So here's my take on that. If you're paying him 12 or 13 million, you're going to pay him 12 or 13 million either way, whether he's sitting on the bench or starting. Do you want to lose games because you decided to pay him $13 million? I don't understand. I mean, in one hand, I understand you're paying the guy, you want to get something out of it, but it's almost like you've made a mistake and now you're going to compound it. In my, and I'm not a Odorizzi believer. And I don't believe Javier's a good reliever, but he's not as effective as a reliever as he is as a starter. So I think you're getting the worst of both ends of that deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said that he's not a high leverage guy, but he does eat innings when a starter gets in trouble, right? And you need that; it's valuable, and he can bridge the gap to that Maton, Stanek, Presley, group that's going to be closing out the bullpen. And I think without him in that role, I don't know who you look to else otherwise that you could you just confidently be like, or Hector Neris too. Sorry, who's probably be the setup man or setup man 2.0. But Odorizzi, you're right. I mean, he has no value in the bullpen. He's not but he also came into spring super late. He coming off an injury year. I mean, he's getting kind of got a short kind of run. I think he didn't even have his first start until almost April. So, I think this is just the best position that you can move these particular pieces. I'd love to have something better in that, but I don't think it works out that way.
I mean, it's a fair enough point about the role that Javier plays, especially when you get to August and September. Everybody's got 120, 130, 140 innings. You're trying to save innings for the Garcias of the world and the Urquidis and that. So appreciate your time, Christian. Just drop whenever you have to drop. Go ahead and drop, and we'll talk to you next week, hopefully. All right, Matt Kunkel, your thoughts on the rotation, the Odorizzi Javier conundrum?
Well, I think Christian's right how it is right now. I think that's going to be set, but I don't think it's done for him. I honestly think, this season, at least in the first half, they want to make sure Odorizzi is worth the money, as in he's a back of the end rotation guy that can eat up innings. I think Javier is going to end up starting. I mean, we've talked about how rotations don't tend to be fully healthy all year long, and we even talked about some other players that may see some regression, namely Luis Garcia. I think Javier is going to get some starts. I think it's going to happen. I think it's more contingent on between Odorizzi and Javier. Yeah, you got to justify the contract a little more, and he's got more starts under his belt. Let's see if he can have a bounce back. I think he is going to have a bounce back, but I don't think this just means Javier is going to be our long reliever. I think there's going to be other avenues for him getting in the rotation, and it's probably just going to be availability, spot starts where he ends up kind of pushing his way up. I think he's going to get that, but it's just not going to start in April.
Okay, Brian Dunleavy.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think Odorizzi is here to stay. They're paying him way too much money for what he's worth. He's, career 4 ERA. Had a couple of good seasons, one in 2019 at 3.5 and 2015 at 3.35. And I definitely say he's here to stay because, guess which team he was on between 2013 and 2017? That's right, the Tampa Bay Rays. So they're not going to get rid of him just for that fact alone. Even if his middle name was Ray, they wouldn't get rid of him. So, with that in mind, I think what we're saying though is true. I think Javier is going to be the guy that's next up, and if somebody gets hurt, if Garcia falters, if Urquidy falters, either of those guys have a worse than expected string of starts, he might fill in here and there and see if he can do any better. I think honestly by midseason he's either traded or he's going to be one of the starters. It's one or the other. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be another situation where he's the guy that's traded off the team, and I can't even. I had the name in my head, and it's gone now. But similar to the past, where the Astros have traded, starting pitcher prospect guy on their team, and he gets to the other team and is lights out, on the team that he goes to because he actually gets an opportunity to pitch regularly. So. Unfortunately, I think that's probably what's going to happen to him, but I'd love to see him stay. I think he's got great stuff, and I like him almost over, and I really like Urquidy. I almost like him over Urquidy or Garcia because of just the versatility that he brings with the variety of pitches. And those two guys have a more streamlined approach to at bats.
Yeah, and I'll leave it with this. I'm repeating myself, but I just don't understand. It's $13 million either way, or whatever the number is. It's done. It's gone. You're saying I did something stupid, so let me make it worse, kind of thing, right? Let me start him and maybe win 2 less games this year or 3 or whatever. I don't know. Okay,
happens all the time. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. In Major League Baseball and college baseball, the same thing. Well, I'm not gonna play the guy I didn't give the full ride to at Clemson. I'm gonna over the bench guy. So, same concept, different thing. But I think I would love to see if they had a different. If Jeff Luhnow was back and risen from the grave, he'd probably trade him. Or has already traded him during the winter. But that's not going to happen. I don't think.
It seems like most of the time those situations don't happen on teams that are in the World Series for 3 out of 5 years and have a world. Those are happening for the Baltimore Orioles where they paid somebody $25 million a year to hit 196 or whatever it is. So I just kind of find it unique. Okay, before we run out of time, I did want to talk about center field, and I do have a rant as I put on our Slack channel. My rant is Dusty Baker talking about Chas McCormick. Now, before today, Chas McCormick was 0 for 9 with 7 strikeouts. And today he was 2 for 3, and the third one supposedly was hit hard. I didn't see it, but that's what Dusty said. So here's my deal. The guy had 284 at-bats last year as a rookie, hit 14 home runs, had 50 RBIs, and struck out 32.5% of the time. Sounds like a lot. People talk about Chas striking out. Well, the other wonderkin center fielder that's injured right now, their numbers are almost exactly the same. Christian and I were talking about this before we hit record. 257 for McCormick, 260 for Myers. The on-base percentage is within 3 or 4 points. The slugging percentage, Chas is a little bit higher slugging percentage. They're exactly the same statistically. But Myers, even strikeouts, Myers strikes out 30.6% of the time. Both of them are over 30%. Over a 600 at-bat season, theoretically, Chas would strike out, whoop-de-doo, 12 more times. So one of them is the center fielder of the future, and one of them gets railed by the manager after 9 spring at-bats after he proved he could hit in 284 at-bats last year. Now, Brian, I know you've told me, and you're a much more experienced hitter than I am, he has a hole in his swing. He is going to strike out. We know that, right? We understand that. But so did Jake Myers. Chas is also going to hit home runs. Nobody's saying he's going to be your leadoff batter and bat 315. But I think the guy proved he deserves more than 9 at-bats. Reading the tea leaves, I think Chas is going to be on a very short leash in center field if he even starts at all. I'm starting to think they're trending toward Siri and Brinson. We know Dusty likes Siri, and Brinson's having a little bit of a spring, right? So I'm reading the tea leaves. Chad's on a short leash. I don't understand it. The guy's done nothing. He can play all 3 outfield positions, play them all well. I was not a Dusty lover, but I understood and could see where he's coming from on some of these things. Brian, I know you're less so inclined to enjoy Dusty. I'm starting to come onto your bandwagon. So please, for the love of God, tell me why they're doing this to Chas. I know that all the fans want to trade him except for me, But why are they doing this to Chaz? And you said it on the last podcast we have. If they play Brinson or is it Goodrum? If they play those guys, one of those guys in center field, the Astros aren't going to win. I agree 100%. They need Jake Myers back, but until then, Chaz should be able to hold down 50 games. Whew. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, I agree with you. I have no faith whatsoever in Jose Siri. I think he's fast, and I think he wants to hit a home run every time he swings the bat. And I think that's all I can say about Jose Siri. His defensive skills are poor, and he showcased that multiple times last season. I think one time he almost got hit in the head with the ball because he dove. It was just, like,
yeah, he did.
Come on.
He almost wrecked Tucker, too. He almost wrecked Tucker.
Yes. Yeah. So I do not like Jose Siri whatsoever. I do not see what anybody who likes Jose Siri sees in him. I really don't. Looking at him, I would take Chaz over him and Brinson any day, because I don't think, I think both of those guys are at most a platoon guy on any other team. And here we're talking about the potential world champion, Houston Astros, and we're talking about starting guys that would platoon on any other big league club. I don't see that as reasonable. I agree with you. Give Chaz the ABs. I think he plays a pretty decent center field comparatively, and I think he's going to be the guy, and he has to be the guy that starts. Otherwise, we're really up a creek. If we have Jose Siri starting with Jeremy Pena, and Martin Maldonado, you're rounding out the bottom of the lineup there, and that does not look good. It just doesn't look like it. It should. So I don't see that as a good solution. I don't see either of them starting. I think Chaz. If Chaz was 50 pounds heavier, he'd be dropping bombs. He'd be the 250 hitter that hits 35 home runs, 40 home runs in a season. But unfortunately, he plays center field. He's not that big. He's not the Cecil Fielder type, if you will. But if he was, he would be, the way he swings the bat, that's what he would be. I think the knock against Chaz, and I think this is why he gets the lower tier compared to Jake Myers, is Jake Myers' season and his progression went up, and Chaz opposite direction. And towards the end of his season, if you will, starting in center field in July, he just tanked. And I think a lot of opposing teams that faced him multiple times saw what they had to do to strike him out, spin him up some curveballs, and he'll swing right through them and see you later. So unless he improves that point of his game, which in this shortened off season, I don't think it has much of a chance to be improved. I think he's out as soon as Jake Myers is ready to go. And, and maybe even if he starts striking out like he's been this spring, he might even see Brinson in there or Siri, because, Dustbag likes him so much that could be. But I think your best shot is with Chaz, 100%.
All right, dust bag. So wow, we're letting it all hang out here on episode 9. You just tune in for episode 10, because the losses will be piling up by then, right, fellas? So we'll be having some actual baseball to talk about. Matt Kunkel, your take on the center field position.
Well, we talked about this on a prior pod. I think the organization ranks the center fielders right now as Jake Myers, then Chaz, then Jose Siri. So it's going to be I think short term it's going to be dependent upon when Jake Myers is going to return, and then more in the long term, you're looking at a guy like Pedro Leon. When is he going to be ready? And I honestly, here's my thought. I think Chaz is going to get a fair crack at playing center field. He's going to start. He's going to bat 8th or 9th, and we'll see how he does with the strikeout. See if he can adjust to big league pitchers adjusting to him, because the book's out on him how to get him out. But I think it's going to be a play where you let him play, let him get at bats, prop his value up, and then you trade him, and then you slot in Jake Myers with Jose Siri, and maybe if Pedro Leon is ready, or Lewis Brinson, who looks actually awesome in spring training. I'm going to try not to fall in love with guys that play well in spring training. but I've watched a few and I'm like, this guy's good. So I mean, it's kind of like how they treated Miles Straw. I got it right. Yeah. He was a speed guy. He played great defense, and like he's done everything to earn the spot. No, he gets traded. He's going to play for the Guardians now. So I think it's going to be a similar situation. I don't think Chaz is part of the long-term plans for the Astros, but I do think he is a starting center fielder in this league, and I think the Astros will either stick with him if he has a great season, or if they think it's, he's kind of plateaued, they can find a home for him, kind of like they did with Straw and Toro and some of these other great guys that have developed in the Astros system.
Yeah, it's funny. This is personal for me, as I put on Twitter. I didn't tell anybody it's personal, but you could tell from my tweet that there was somebody who had 2 hits in his first high school game, and then overheard the coach asking the guy that kept the book, hey, how many hits did Coleman have? And I'm thinking, it's the first game of the season. It's not like you're trying to remember 30 games. I had 2 hits. You don't even remember that. I'm surprised you remember my name. But in my mind, I knew he was already looking for a reason to replace me, right? Which happened later in the year, by the way. But and I deserved it. Honestly. So in my mind, when I'm reading what Dusty's saying, he's like planting the seeds for somebody else to play center field, right? Whether that's game 1, game 5, game 10, whatever it is, it's somebody else. We know it's going to be Jake Myers when he gets back. That's not the question. The question is until we get to Jake Myers. And that's why it was personal for me when I saw that. And I wanted to talk about it because it's obvious. Hit 284 bats mean 0 to Dusty. It's the 9 in spring training that he's focused on for Chaz. Not very good. Who knows? Maybe Chaz about 200 and he should be replaced, and I'll be on the other side of the fence. But right now, the guy's done nothing, and the 9 at bats in spring don't mean anything to me. He's 0 for 9 in the first 3 games with 7 strikeouts. We'll talk again. But until then, I'm on Chaz's side. Brian Dunleavy, Matt Kunkel, thank you so much. Also, Christian Espinoza had to drop off, but thank you very much, guys. Episode 9's in the books. Let's set a date for next week, and we'll be opening day, fellas. We need to do a Twitter Spaces, as I talked about. Let's put that in. All right.
Let's take out the Halos on opening night.
That's right.
And
Ohtani. Lead-off home run for Jeremy Pena off Ohtani.
Oh, man. That was a text from the kid when he found out Ohtani was starting opening day. I got the text. So looking forward to it, guys. Until next week, appreciate your time, and I'll see you over on Climbing Taos Hill.
Take it easy.
See ya.